What's up, everyone? Welcome to Hot Takes with Holmes here on Radio Free Radford. This is a special broadcast today because it's time for our Super Bowl preview. That's right, this entire show is going to be centered around the football action leading up to one of the biggest events in the year when it comes to sports. My name is Blake Holmes. I'm here with my co-host, Isaiah Addair. Stick around with us. We're going to be discussing everything leading towards the big game, the New England Patriots versus the Philadelphia Eagles. But first, I want to briefly discuss the Pro Bowl action last week. You know, a lot of people think that the Pro Bowl is irrelevant and it doesn't really mean anything anymore because it's a bunch of people that would rather be in the Super Bowl, but it's still a big event in the NFL every year. This game, this time, the AFC knocked off the NFC 24-23. The AFC dominated the passing game. It's weird for me to say this. They had two 100-yard passers compared to NFC's none. And these 100-yard passers were Derek Carr, and I believe the other one was Phillip Rivers, if I'm not mistaken, because Big Ben did not. Actually, Antonio Brown attempted a pass in this game. It was not complete, but Phillip Rivers and Derek Carr both had over 100 yards passing. Delaney Walker took home the offensive MVP with 2 touchdown catches, including one with 1:31 to go in the game to seal the win for the AFC All-Stars, whereas on the defensive side, it was Von Miller. And Isaiah, tell us a little bit about the game Von Miller had in this game.
Von Miller came up with a strip sack at the very end of the game. I think it was to give the AFC the ball back, if I'm not mistaken. It was to give them the ball back, so the NFC didn't have that last-second chance to score and take the lead. But yeah, Von Miller, it was impactful. Should he have been? I saw there was some controversy over should he have been defensive MVP? Because Patrick Peterson on the NFC side had 2 interceptions. He had the biggest impact out of all the defensive players, but he was on the losing side.
So that's going to do it for the Pro Bowl. So now let's start with the Super Bowl projections. We're going to be talking about basically what we're going to do is we're going to recap the seasons for the 2 teams before this, starting with New England on the AFC side. So we're going to basically go through and highlight their schedule, basically say how each game went for them, and we're going to say what that really told us at that time. So for week 1 of the NFL season, this was actually a kind of a shocking game. They lost 42-27 to the Kansas City Chiefs in Gillette Stadium, and this was the emerging of Kareem Hunt, as he had the most scrimmage yards combined by any rookie ever in their debut. So, big game there, but New England fell to 0-1. They went to New Orleans, knocked off Drew Brees. At the time, people were thinking maybe New Orleans wouldn't be that good, but now that win looks a whole lot more impressive than it did before. So the next game was against Houston. Houston at this time had Deshaun Watson, and the Patriots actually barely escaped this game in Gillette Stadium, 36-33. Tom Brady having a great game in that game, 378 yards passing, and they escaped with a win over the Texans.
After that game was against Carolina in Gillette Stadium, and they actually lost to Carolina by 3 points. The leading receiver was Gronk at 80 yards, tight end being the top target. It kind of just shows how they utilize every position on the field. Then was in Tampa. They won 19-14 in a lower scoring game. After that was in New York, well, New Jersey technically, against the Jets, where they escaped with a 7-point win. Then at home against Atlanta for a 23-7 victory. And then before the bye week, capping off the beginning of the regular season, it was an 8-point win over the Chargers in Gillette.
The bye week didn't slow down the Patriots after this. They went on a tear as they went into the Mile High City, where Brady sometimes has trouble. Not this time. With a struggling Broncos team, won 41-16. Brady had 266 passing yards this game, and your leading receivers were both Gronkowski and Brandon Cooks, with both 74 yards receiving. The next game was at Oakland, another cross-country visit. Got the dub there, too, 33-8. Brady with 340 passing yards, Cooks with 149 of those, And at this time, the Raiders were struggling. Raiders turned it on towards the end of the season. Not so much here. Pats really exploited that. Miami, they went and hosted Miami in Foxborough, got the dub 35-17. Pretty well forgettable game. That wasn't the bigger game between Miami came later on in the year. A game that a lot of people thought could have been an upset wasn't so much. Buffalo lost 23-3, and in Buffalo, New England kept pushing towards that number one seed in the AFC. Biggest game at this point in the season, a loss in Miami, a place that Brady always seems to have his off game in. If you had to put money on it and say if there's a game that he's going to struggle in, it's in Miami. So that isn't necessarily a bad thing towards Brady. It's going from a cold climate to a ridiculously hot climate. It's very different from back at home, and the Dolphins got the win 27-20 in Miami. Now, here comes the most controversial game of the regular season. In Heinz Field, in Pittsburgh, and they escaped 27-24 on a late game comeback by Tom Brady, and what a lot of people believe is a blown call at the end on a catch rule. This really ignited, once again, the argument that a lot of people have had over the years. What in the world is a catch these days? I personally am on the side that I still think Jesse James caught that ball. I still think that it was a touchdown, but we all have to live with the officials' ruling. It was not a touchdown, and they escaped with a 27-24 win. What did this game have? What kind of impact did this game have on the entire season for both squads, Isaiah?
Well, for one, it just it gave New England that one game advantage, and also set Pittsburgh one game behind. When you're fighting for those top seeds, or the top seeds specifically. But that game, the impact just on record and postseason, I think it had less of an impact overall than just the Jesse James catch. Roger Goodell said this past week that he's concerned about the catch rule, and I'm like, we've been concerned for the past 4 or 5 years since Calvin Johnson's big catch in the end zone that they called back. So I think that's the biggest impact the game had was just on what is a catch, like you said. And hopefully there's answers this offseason.
Another ruling, actually, the next week in a similar fashion against Buffalo in Foxborough. I believe Kelvin Benjamin in the back corner of the end zone caught once again. Everyone thought very clear touchdown catch, ruled back. Therefore, and I mean, this game, that touchdown really didn't matter, but it could have been a motivational thing. We don't know. Bottom line, Buffalo gets beat by the Pats 37-16 in Foxborough. Deion Lewis, phenomenal in this game, 129 rushing yards. Then the final game, the game that clinched the number one seed in the AFC, a 26-6 win over a Josh McCown-less New York Jets in Foxborough. Tom Brady not looking that too stellar in that game, only 190 yards passing, but at that point, they weren't really too concerned with stats at that point. They clinched the number one seed, and they were going into the playoffs, which their first game was in the divisional round when the Tennessee Titans, they hosted the Tennessee Titans after they knocked off the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead. And Tennessee didn't really put up much of a fight in this game. They took the lead. They did have a lead 7-0. Didn't see after that. Final score 35-14. And taking on in the conference championship round, the Jacksonville Jaguars, where, as most famously noted, Jalen Ramsey before the game pulled a famous Pittsburgh Steelers move and said, we're going to the Super Bowl, and we're going to win that word that I can't say on air. So Jacksonville put up a great fight. Once again, Tom Brady, probably one of the greatest comeback players of all time, if not the greatest, finds a way to win this game 24-20, and that clinched a spot in the Super Bowl. Isaiah, who should have won this game? Did the Pats earn that, or do you think that the Jags had just a classic choke? Or who do you really think, whose fault was it that Jacksonville really lost that game?
I think Jacksonville just choked. But then at the same time, New England started to put in work. I think the loss, as much as I love the defense, as much as I love the coaching staff, I think part of it does come down to the defense. Like, how do you allow a comeback like that to take place if you're the best defense in the league? But also, the coach has to be willing to let Blake Bortles late in the game if they're behind has to let him pull the trigger. I know he's not the greatest quarterback, but he was really good. Like, postseason play, he was one of the better quarterbacks this postseason. Had moments where he might have potentially outshined guys like Brady. I think there was one game. I think it was a divisional and conference round both. I think that he played stellar in comparison to anybody. So I think definitely you got to have confidence in your quarterback, and I think that's where they really faltered because they wanted to rely on the ground game, which, don't get me wrong, is really good. But if you're behind or if the other team's coming back, you need a big play to keep the lead there.
Now, everyone knows what makes the New England Patriots right now. It's a mixture, but it's mostly Tom Brady. That's the face that everyone knows. He's been a little bit up and down this year. He's been pretty good all year long. He's either been stellar or he's been decent. It hasn't been anything fantastic. But it begs the question, is this the best Tom Brady that we have ever seen? And in my opinion, considering he's doing all this at 40 years old, yes, I believe it is. I believe he's like a fine wine. He gets better as with age. He gets even better and better. But if he keeps playing the way he is, I don't see him hanging it up anytime soon. There's no reason for him to if he keeps playing at this level. And granted, this defense has not been good this year. We can't even begin to pretend that they have. So the only reason they're at this point, I believe, is because of Tom Brady. So is this the best Tom Brady that we have ever witnessed in his career?
I would say yes. Decision making, like his interception total was really extremely low this year. I think five or six maybe. 4,500 yards, near the top of the league in touchdowns. I think he might have finished first or second in touchdowns. Yeah, he did lead the league in passing yards. When it comes to health, it was probably the second worst season he's ever had, second to the ACL tear. But at the same time, he's been on the field, and that just shows how good he really is. He's been able to do all of this with injuries nagging at him and this whole team. So I would say it's the best that we've seen. I don't think it'll last too long, though.
Once again, as I mentioned, the defense just struggling all year long. And in the past, Brady's had a pretty decent defense, especially in the early 2000s. But as of now, it's been the offense carrying this game. And you know the motto, defense wins championships. And I guess if they can step up at the right time, then you could say that. But what is going on with this Pats defense? They have a few playmakers. Obviously the two that come to mind are Patrick Chung and Malcolm Butler. But what is going on with this Patriots defense?
As much as I'm loving Bill Belichick's what's going on, they had Rob Ninkovich who decided to retire. But aside from that, before last season, they traded Chandler Jones. During last season, they traded Jamie Collins, who were a top pass rushing duo, and Rob Ninkovich was just such a solid player. And then they had Dante Hightower. That's who I was thinking of. They let him walk. They had so many stellar players in the front seven because the two playmakers you mentioned are in the secondary. In the front seven, that's four playmakers. One retired, you can't do anything about. The other two, they dealt away or they just let walk. And I think that's what happened because they were solid.
Now, once again, as I've stated several times, comebacks. That's a lot of what you could say about this New England team. And I think you also have to include the special teams in this game. They have one of the best kickers in the game of football on their team. He's proven that time and time over his career. A lot of people even say that it's between him and that guy in Baltimore for the best kicker in football, Stephen Gostkowski. Do I think that he could have a good game in this Super Bowl? Absolutely. When it comes down to it, I think this is going to be another close game. Kind of not like it was last year. It's not going to be a 28-3 scenario where they're going to have to come back big like that. But I think this could be closer than a lot of people are thinking. And I got to say, watch out for Stephen Gostkowski. Watch out for that. I wouldn't be shocked to see a potential Adam Vinatieri moment in this game. And Stephen Gostkowski, like I said, just one of the best kickers in football. What a great asset for this special teams to have. So, I think it all starts and it ends with special teams as well. You can't be out there making mistakes. And when you have one of the more consistent kickers in the game, that's not going to be much of a problem. The other side of the coin, the face of the Patriots, I said Brady. It's also Bill Belichick, the head coach. That combo, Brady and Belichick, by the way, 8 Super Bowl appearances now. They've only lost 2. They've only lost 2 of those Super Bowl appearances, and both of them were to the Giants. So they are trying to tie the Pittsburgh Steelers for the most Super Bowl wins in a franchise history. 2 people, 1 dynasty, is trying to go for 6 Super Bowls in 8 appearances. That is just unheard of. So it begs the question, is Tom Brady the greatest quarterback of all time? And at the same side of the coin, is Bill Belichick the greatest head coach of all time? To me, yes. Yes. If you want to talk to me about who maybe is the best regular season quarterback of all time, I'm going to tell you you could make a case for Peyton Manning. You could make a case for Brett Favre, more so Peyton Manning to me. But when you want to talk about overall, because to me, to be the greatest of all time, to be the GOAT, it involves stepping up when it matters most. It's not just stats. It's not just that. It's those moments to where you're late in the game and you know that you're most likely going to win because you have that guy. You have the guy that just relishes it, that steps up when the matters is most. And I believe Tom Brady is the perfect example of that. Tom Brady lives for clutch moments. He lives for that. To me, he's the most clutch quarterback of all time. And to me, a lot of times that translates to being the GOAT. When you think about basketball, who do you think is the greatest players of all time? Michael Jordan, LeBron James. Whether you say is postseason success or final success, if you think postseason success overall, LeBron James by far. He's 3-4 in the NBA Finals. That's 7 appearances, 7 in a row. Actually, I believe it's 8 total, but 7 in a row. That's insane. But Michael Jordan went 6-0. They stepped up when it matters most, and that's why they're in the conversations. And I believe Tom Brady is the example of this. Tom Brady shows consistency in the postseason, and it pains me to say that because I'm not a Pats fan, but at the same time, I got to respect greatness where greatness is due. So, Isaiah, do you think that, and I think Bill Belichick is also the greatest coach of all time. I mean, to take a Pats team that wasn't, he had playmakers, but to turn the Pats into potentially the greatest dynasty of all time, the coaching decisions he makes, and you could say Brady may be assistant quarterback, but he's smart enough to know that him and Belichick click. And I believe that it's due to this. It's evident. That is evidence that this is just a fantastic combo and the greatest of all time. So, Isaiah, are these two the greatest of all time at their respective positions?
They're the greatest duo of all time. When it comes to greatest coach, I'd say Belichick's number 2 or 3 behind Lombardi and Madden potentially. Maybe Bill Walsh. I'd put him in the conversation for top 2 though. When it comes to Brady, there's a lot of factors. When it comes to regular season success, for me it'd be Drew Brees. I'd put Brees up there because he only had 1 Pro Bowl receiver ever, and it wasn't until this year with Michael Thomas. So I'd put him number 1 regular season. Peyton would be number 2 regular season. When it comes to postseason, it would have to be between Brady and Montana. Just because Montana, Tom Brady he's a comeback kid. He'll be losing as we've seen so much the past 2 years especially. He'll come back and lead them to a victory. The thing with Joe Montana, in playoffs and Super Bowls, he never made mistakes. So do you have to come back if you never make a mistake to where you're put in the position? Montana, I think he owns the record, for most straight touchdown passes without a single interception.
He's actually tied that record. It's both Joe Montana and Joe Flacco. Both of them went for 11 touchdowns with no picks in a postseason. Flacco tied that in 2012.
That was in one postseason though. I think Montana's might have included the season before or the season after, but that was in one postseason. You're right. But I think over their overall record, I think Montana does hold, and he's perfect in Super Bowls. People say, "Oh, he didn't go to as many Super Bowls," but when it comes to stepping up in the most important stage, it's kind of like the Jordan. It's kind of like the Jordan James conversation. He goes to more versus has a perfect record. Actually, it's if you think about it, it's exactly the same situation. But I don't know. Tom Brady, when it comes to regular season, I'd put him top 4, top 3, top 4, probably top 3. But when it comes to playoff postseason success, he's in the conversation for the top two. But it is LeBron Jordan. It's that same debate.
Another popular debate that's been going on lately is if Tom Brady finds a way to win the championship this year again, is he in the conversation with the greatest athlete of all time with Michael Jordan? Considering both have 6 championships, the MVPs are very similar. It's just a very similar thing. In fact, Tom Brady in the running for MVP this year, one of the top 3. A lot of people think with Todd Gurley and Antonio Brown, but I see your point. I do believe that you have to look, and also think about what his team was whenever they lost those Super Bowls. Granted, it was a heck of an upset for the first time, and it took a miraculous escape from Eli Manning and a unheard of catch from David Tyree to knock them off. And they were, what was that? They were at 19-0 or 18 or 19, or it was 18-0 in fact at that point. They were looking for perfection, 19-0. So you have to give credit at some point. And at that point, with that loss, you can even pin that on the defense. They should have sacked Eli Manning. They should have never let Tyree make that insane catch. But that's what makes a Super Bowl a Super Bowl. And to think they were only a few plays away, and it wasn't necessarily on Brady. Brady played phenomenal in that game too. So that's just, you can't really, he stepped up when it matters most. His defense didn't. And that's what a lot of people don't realize also. He should probably have 6 Super Bowls right now. But we look back at the greatness that David Tyree had and the escape that Eli Manning had, and also the catch in the Mario Manningham catch in the next Super Bowl. Defense. I think personally gave up those championships, and that's why I think you need to put Tom Brady. He is the greatest quarterback of all time, in my opinion. And like I said, it pains me to say that, but I got to respect greatness where greatness is due. So moving on to the other team from the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles. A very up and down season. So we'll start off week 1. Week 1, traveling to Washington. They actually knocked off the Redskins in this game, 30-17. Carson Wentz had a big game, 307 passing yards. But the next game, he had a bigger game in a loss. Kansas City beating them 27-20. Kansas City started off this season strong with wins, back-to-back wins against the Pats and Eagles. In fact, the 2 Super Bowl teams, they beat week 1, week 2, and they kind of collapsed after that, or later on in the season. And they beat the Eagles 27-20. Wentz had 33 passing yards. Zach Ertz 97 of those receiving yards. New York hosting the New York Giants, winning 27-24. Not a big statistical game, but stats don't matter when you get the win. That's what I like to say sometimes. Going across the country to the Chargers. Chargers struggling mightily in the first part of this season. In fact, this put them at 0-4 when they lost 26-24 behind LeGarrette Blount's 136 rushing yards. So I'll let Isaiah take over this next part because from week 5, it featured his team.
Oh yeah, week 5 they demolished and completely dismantled the Arizona Cardinals, eventually keeping them out of playoffs, 34-7. Those other factors, but you know. The game after that, that was actually in Philly. The game after that, you want me to just take the next few? Was in Carolina. Close win, 28-23. See the emergence of Alshon Jeffrey is high for the season up to this point, 71 yards. Then the next 3 games, the home stretch before the bye week. Against Washington, a 10-point win with wins totaling 268 yards and also being the leading rusher with 63 yards. Then a win against San Francisco, 33-10. Wentz was the leading, well, of course he was the leading passer, 211 yards. And Clement gets on the board as the high rusher for that game. And then in Denver, Jay Ajayi, hosting Denver, of course. Jay Ajayi, he made his, I think it was his debut game, right before the deadline. And they put up a whopping 51 points on the Denver defense. And Ajayi was the leading rusher with 77 yards.
This game was hilariously bad for the Denver Broncos. I remember seeing a picture one time on Twitter, and it made me laugh because there was a caption that said, Brock Osweiler, he's wide open, as he threw it to one receiver covered by literally 4 Eagles players. Brock Osweiler did not look good in this game at all. It was just hilariously bad for the Broncos. And, in fact, it was so bad, it got taken off of national television. So, bit easy win, but good win for the Eagles there. Taking on the Cowboys in Dallas, winning 37-9, dismantling them. Wentz not having that great of a game, but Jay Ajayi picking up the rushing load with 91 rushing yards, and they got the dub in Jerry World. Taking on Chicago, the Bears at home, who I said the Bears were the streakiest team. They had talent. They beat every team in the AFC North, but then they get destroyed like they did against the Eagles, 31-3. And Zach Ertz breaking the 100-yard receiving yard. The first time the Eagles had one all season long, Ertz had 103 receiving yards. A big game here in Seattle, across the country. Carson Wentz was phenomenal. 348 passing yards, and Nelson Aguilar with 141 of those. But they did lose 24-10 in CenturyLink. So, this was the big game that decided a major factor in the season. The Los Angeles Rams at L.A. They escaped with a win. 43-35. It was the biggest loss of the season, though, because Carson Wentz tore his ACL. That is the biggest momentum killer that the Eagles had. Granted, they are in the Super Bowl. I mean, take that for what it's worth. But to lose your franchise quarterback, and they got the win. Rams ended up going on to lose in the first round of the playoffs to the Atlanta Falcons. And they escape with a win. So, who steps in to take his role against the New York Giants? Nick Foles, former Eagles quarterback who actually was not bad, threw 27 touchdowns and 3 picks in one season. Led them to another win over the Giants, 34-29, 237 passing yards in the season debut for Nick Foles. And they were in a good position. If I'm not mistaken, did they clinch the number 1 seed at this point, or was it? I know they clinched a home field game in the next round. I do not remember if it was for the number 1 seed or not.
Week 16 against the Oakland Raiders at home in Philadelphia was a win. I think this is actually the game that clinched the number 1 seed. A 19-10 win. Nick Foles didn't tear up the stat sheet, but did enough to win with 163 yards. Then the last game of the season was probably one of the most underwhelming games of all time. Nate Sudfeld was the quarterback. Their starters were rested. And, a 6-0 loss to the Cowboys. And then the divisional round of the playoffs, because the first round bye and the home field advantage that was given to the Philadelphia, was a game against the Atlanta Falcons. Many believe the Falcons were going to take down Foles and the Eagles. But no, they pulled through 246 yards by Foles. 54 yards by Ajayi and 61 by Jeffrey receiving within a 15-10 win.
And finally, that game I thought was going to be a blowout in the other direction, which they proved me wrong. But Minnesota dismantling them. I mean, just destroy them. Case Keenum did not look good at all in this game. Nick Foles, 352 passing yards for either 3 or 4 touchdowns. And it was a masterpiece. It was the Nick Foles of old, as I like to say. And he was the deciding factor, I think, that got them into the Super Bowl, because he picked it up, and the Vikings did not look like the same team they did against the New Orleans Saints. And they punched their ticket to the Super Bowl, and in fact, it'll be a 1 seed versus 1 seed in Super Bowl 52. Now, as I mentioned, Carson Wentz had that ACL injury. That's a big loss for the Philadelphia. It'd be a big loss for anyone, big loss for the Philadelphia Eagles. However, a big addition this year, the trade for Jay Ajayi from the Miami Dolphins gave them a two-headed monster in the backfield, kind of like the one in New Orleans, but with Jay Ajayi and LeGarrette Blount. So how big of an addition was this trade for this Eagles offense?
It was huge. Given they're both power runners, they're both extremely powerful runners. But Ajayi adds a pass-catching dimension to the team, so where they don't have to take out a power runner and change the game plan. If they put in Wendell Smallwood or Donnell Pumphrey or Corey Clement, instead of changing the dynamic by putting in the smaller, faster backs, they can take out Blunt and put in Ajayi, so you can still run between the tackles, throw a screen, a wheel route, something like that. And I just think the impact it had on the passing game, I think that's what helped Foles out. Gave him an extra receiver, and you can keep pounding the rock and tiring out the defense even more.
LeGarrette Blount, one of the two-headed monster in the backfield, is taking on the team he won a Super Bowl with last year. And that's right, he actually played a pretty big part in that team last year. Him and Dion Lewis leading and helping the Patriots come back in that game, and the 28-3 game. And LeGarrette Blount will be looking for some fire. He'll be looking to get a little bit. Both LeGarrette Blount and Chris Long, in fact, are going against their former team and trying to steal a Super Bowl, trying to ruin a little bit of greatness in this game. The good defense. Philadelphia's had a very good defense this year. What are some of the highlight players that you think are on this defense that really set this defense apart from everyone else, that have really led to them being as good as they have been?
I'm going to say, first of all, Kendrick's the middle linebacker. He's probably not going to be the primary cover man on Lewis, but he's going to play a big part on that, and just being the quarterback of the defense and being able to recognize different formations and protections. And if he does end up covering Lewis for a portion of the game, because he's capable to pass cover, it'll just be a game changer. Because if you take away the check down that Brady loves so much with a shifty running back that can make stuff happen after the catch, then he only has his receivers. And the secondary's played surprisingly well. So my second watch-out player would probably just be the corners in particular. If they're able to maintain control of that and they're able to shut down Dion Lewis in the passing game, it's going to make it easier for the corners to shut down their men.
Sort of an underrated player I think they've been talking about that hasn't really been mentioned a ton is actually a rookie. Defensive lineman Derek Barnett had a big sack in this postseason, a game clincher, and I think that adding the defensive end, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but his shiftiness, his ability to move and escape blocks, his block shed ability is insane, especially for a player as young. And Fletcher Cox was asked earlier in the week asking what he thought of Derek Barnett, and he said, and I quote, "Derek is one of the greatest rookies I've ever been around." Whether or not he will translate to future greatness, we don't know. What will he be a big factor getting to Brady in the Super Bowl, being a good pass rusher? Once again, we don't know. But I think that's an interesting player to look out for. It's a player that has played decently well for this Eagles team and wasn't really all that known. He was kind of overshadowed in his college career by Myles Garrett. But fun fact, Tennessee's all-time sack leader, beating Reggie White in his career. So following Reggie White to Philly, I think it'll be interesting to see if Barnett could take the next step and get to Brady a few times in this Super Bowl. Once again, Nick Foles leading his former team to the Super Bowl after playing very well and getting dealt to the Rams later in his career, which he was not very good. But then again, no one's very good with Jeff Fisher as your coach, as a quarterback. And here he is back at Philly, and he's got him in the Super Bowl. Can he finish and knock off Brady? If he plays like he has this postseason, I see it. Once again, it all comes down to this, but I think he's got a pretty good shot if he plays like he has this postseason. So that's going to do it for the recaps of the season. Now for the actual Super Bowl. What we're going to do now is we're going to go position by position. So who has the better quarterbacks, running backs, and so on. So I think we can go ahead and make this simple with the first one. Who has the better quarterback? New England. No explanation needed.
Philadelphia. No, I want to say Philadelphia. No, I don't. I don't even want to say Philadelphia. If Carson Wentz was playing, it would be a tougher question. Nick Foles, I don't know. They have the same play style, but Brady, obviously that play style he's mastered. Nick Foles is far from mastered it.
Going under running backs, New England, Dion Lewis has played pretty well as of late, but I'm giving the edge to Philadelphia in this because of you have a guy like that had an emergence like Jay Ajayi did, and he's still playing like he did last year, and you have a guy like LeGarrette Blount who's a bruiser who will get you a 3rd and 1, he'll get you a first down there, and I give the edge right there to Philadelphia.
Yeah, for me it's a no-brainer to go Philadelphia. Dion Lewis is a better pass catcher than Ajayi, but Ajayi is a more talented runner. Blunt's even a more talented runner than anyone New England had. That's why, even though New England had the same running backs last year, other than Gillislee, who played a bigger role early in the season, not much later, that's why Blunt was the best running back on the roster. He just wanted too much money, and they're like, oh, he's dispensable. So he went to Philly. If he's the second best running back on Philly and would have been the best on New England if he stayed, that answers it for me right there.
Wide receivers, this is a little bit tougher of a battle when you go down to receivers, and if you want to include tight ends here, because to me, if I go receiving core, I'm going Philly. If I go tight end, I'm going Pats. That's the thing that makes this difficult. But overall, I'm going New England just because Gronk is a game changer. And if Gronk's going to be healthy to play, which everything's indicating that he will be suiting up Sunday, I think that this receiving core with Brandon Cooks, with Danny Amendola coming off the big game he had, and with Gronk, I'm taking New England in the receiver edge.
I'm going to actually go with Philadelphia, just for the fact that Gronk obviously gives a big edge to New England, and I love Brandon Cooks. Like, he's one of my favorite receivers in the game. But that's just two playmakers. And if you want to account running backs, the pass-catching attribute, let's not do that, though. That's still two receivers versus Torrey Smith, Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar. Zach Ertz is, I would say, the number 2 or 3, probably after Travis Kelce, too, probably the number 3 tight end in the league. So there's those guys, and then you add in, there's another receiver I feel like I'm forgetting. I don't know. Matt Collins was all right the last game of the year, but just those big 3 receivers plus Zach Ertz. I don't know. I think 4 reliable guys versus, a reliable tight end, and then receivers that can be kind of streaky. I don't know. I would go Philadelphia, but it's pretty even.
The offensive line, I'm giving the edge to New England because, and it's not even necessarily just the work of the offensive line. It's Tom Brady. Tom Brady steps back for 2 seconds and he's going to get rid of the ball. He's going to throw a check down. Or best case or worst case scenario, he sits back for 3.5, 4 seconds and he'll throw a deep pass every once in a while. But as we know, as you've mentioned several times in this show, if he stands in the pocket for too long, he starts seeing ghosts. He ducks for people that aren't really there. So given the pocket presence of mind of Tom Brady, I think I give the edge to New England. I think New England's offensive line's decent, don't get me wrong, but I think the quarterback play makes it a little bit better, gives them an edge there too.
Yeah, I agree. Quarterback play makes the line look better. From a run game standpoint, Philadelphia's run offensive line, like the run protection is better, which is evident by the rushing numbers this past year. But as a line as a whole and pass protection, I got to go New England. I mean, Tom Brady makes their job easier, so it's easier to show out.
Moving to the defense, let's go the linebackers core to start out, and this one's simple to me. I'm going with Philly. Again, New England's defense in general has just not been good, and I don't feel like I've already explained a good bit. We've already explained a good bit. I'm going to say Philadelphia in the linebackers core.
Yeah, I'm going Philadelphia too. No caption needed.
The defensive line, again, Philadelphia.
Yeah, who does New England even have? I know they have some rookie playing tackle. Philadelphia.
Now a little bit more, a little bit different of a debate, the secondary. Usually, if you want to look at statistic-wise, I'd go Philly. I'm going New England this game. You've got a experienced safety in Patrick Chung back there. You've got Malcolm Butler, who is the hero of one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time, and also you have Stephon Gilmore still in your secondary as the Pats. So I'm going with the only defensive thing I'm going with New England. The secondary has the edge to me in this game.
Yeah, I have to go the same route with you. Patrick Chung, I think all the Super Bowls the Eagles have been to combined is 7. Patrick Chung's been to 5. I think 5. Yeah, he's dating back to one of the first ones. It's been 4 or 5 that Chung's went to just himself. So yeah, he's just one player, almost has more experience than the whole team. But Gilmore is one of the most talented. Last year was one of the top probably 5 corners in the league. He's still up there. And then Malcolm Butler is a big game player. Philadelphia secondary is so young. They're going to be even better next year. So if they meet again next year, I would go Philadelphia probably because of experience, but I'm going New England.
So a bit of a regular topic segment on this show is our players to watch out for in the week. We usually pick 2 players to look out for, and it's going to be pretty easy for us this week because there's only one game to choose from. So Isaiah, who are your 2 players to look out for in this upcoming game?
Shoot, that's a good question. I'm going to say on Philadelphia's side, Jay Ajayi. I don't think he eclipsed the 100-yard mark this past season. I think the only running back that Philly had that did was Blunt. But Ajayi did share. I think he had about 60% of the snaps, and Blunt carried about 40 or so. So I think Ajayi is going to be a big playmaker because of his versatility to take the pressure off Foles. And when it comes to New England, I'm going to say Patrick Chung. I expect him to sit back in zone. And since the Eagles have so many threats at receiver, because you can't just key on one guy. There's so many threats, he's going to have to play center fielder. And he has the experience to be able to do that in big games, especially against such talented receiving corps. So I think it'll come down to just his experience and just watching out for him and how he plays certain situations. Nick Foles may end up throwing a pick to him. I think he will, actually.
See, I'm going to go a little bit opposite of you. I want to say Nick Foles, but, I mean, that's kind of the obvious choice. I also don't feel the need to say Tom Brady. Tom Brady, we know what Tom Brady is. We know what we've come to expect from Tom Brady. Mine are actually both going to be receivers. On the New England side, it's Danny Amendola. They're going to be keying in on Brandon Cooks. They're going to be keying in on Rob Gronkowski. After the big game he had last week, look out for Danny Amendola in this game. On the Philadelphia side, I'm going with Alshon Jeffrey. Can Alshon Jeffrey get past Stephon Gilmore and make a play or two? We know him. He's a deep threat. He has been in his entire career in the NFL, dating back to Chicago. Does he have a play like that in this game? Does he catch a long touchdown pass from Nick Foles? We don't know, and I think that's something to look out for. To me, he's either going to have a mediocre game or he's going to have a great game, and he's going to be a major factor in this Eagles offense, along with the run game. So this is actually a flipped. It's the hypothetical of the day, but the NFL/Super Bowl edition. And that hypothetical is if Nick Foles finds a way to lead the Eagles to the Super Bowl and knock off the big bad New England Patriots, does Carson Wentz have a shorter leash when he comes back? I see a lot of fans on social media and even just in general saying that if Nick Foles wins the Super Bowl, then Carson Wentz may kiss his job goodbye, which is not true to me at all. Carson Wentz was putting up MVP numbers before the unfortunate ACL injury happened. Do I think he has a shorter leash? Unfairly, or in a bad circumstance, yes, I think he does, purely because the fans are going to get very upset if Nick Foles finds a way to win it all and Carson Wentz can't repeat any of that successes. They're going to just push the organization to do something they shouldn't, and I think he will have a shorter leash, especially if Nick Foles comes out and shows out in the Super Bowl. Do I think he'll lose his job? Absolutely not.
Simply put, no. From the fans, he will. And down the road, when I think he'll be a Hall of Fame consideration one day, I believe that since he came to the NFL, that may have an implication if he can't take him back to the Super Bowl and Foles is able to win one. But when it comes to coaching and actually playing time, I don't think it will. Because if the Eagles do decide to part ways with him for whatever reason, there's going to be a team automatically just offering up to give him a spot. It's not an RG3 situation. So I don't think it will. Will he feel like there is? He might feel like that. But if you have an MVP quarterback, you just don't bench him for a guy that took a talented team. A guy that took a talented team to the Super Bowl, and the team before him already had 12 wins. Yeah.
You could even make the case that Nick Foles has taken the team that Carson Wentz influenced, the team that Carson Wentz almost built up to a Super Bowl. And I agree with you. I think Carson Wentz has a great and long future in the NFL, especially if he can do what he did this year. But I think that when it comes to Philadelphia, and I think you hit it right on the head, the fans, you can never please a fan. It doesn't matter what you do. in any organization or sport, you can never truly 100% please a fan. So, or a fan base, I should say. So, I think that what you said was perfect. Carson Wentz is going to have a short leash when it comes to a fan standpoint, but I think he'll probably be in Philadelphia for a long time, I believe. So both come from cold climates. We know that. The Eagles coming from Philadelphia, the Patriots coming from New England, coming from Massachusetts. They're both very cold in the Northeast, very cold climates. Although it's being played in a dome, which team does the city of Minneapolis fit better is a question that I'm going to ask. And to me, that's the Eagles, purely because it's an NFC feel. If I don't remember if they played I don't think they played the Vikings in Minneapolis this year, but some of these Eagles players have experience going to Minneapolis, even if it's in last season. If they've I guarantee you probably the Eagles have been to Minneapolis before or more recently than the Patriots have. So I feel like this stadium and this feel fits the Eagles more. So who do you think has the edge over the location? Which team does this city fit better, New England or Philadelphia?
When it comes to just environment of the city itself, I think it'll benefit Philadelphia. Just like you said, they're more familiar with it. Every NFC team, if they don't play yearly because of in-division games, they play bi-yearly, which is every other year. AFC teams only play particular divisions once every 4 years. So, given over Brady's career, he's probably played Minnesota just as much as the Eagles team, most of the Eagles team members have. But just familiarity with the city, and not just that, but hostility toward the fans have toward them. It's going to be a big influence too. People in Minnesota, they may be bad that their team was just beaten by the Eagles, but the Patriots, from a fan's perspective, are the bad guys of the NFL. Everyone wants to see a dynasty crush and just crash and burn. So I think it comes down to the feel too, not just familiarity, but just how hostile the fans are. And the fans are going to be more hostile toward the Patriots.
Now, here comes the moment that you've all been waiting for, our predictions. We're going to start off by saying our bold predictions. So we're each going to have a bold prediction. Something that may not be expected, but could happen, and what we think will, or either will, or has a very good chance of happening in this game. And I'm going to start it off. My bold prediction, Nick Foles outduels Tom Brady, throws for over 300 yards passing and 2 touchdowns in the game. And I say 100 of those are to Alshon Jeffrey. Tom Brady plays well, has a 250 passing yards, has a very good game. But I think in this bold prediction, Nick Foles outplays Tom Brady in most facets and has the better statistical game.
I think that statistically the Eagles will have a better game. I think they'll have a 100-yard receiver, and I think Ajayi will have about 100 yards, and Blown will probably have another 50 or so. That's not counting in for Clement or Smallwood, what they put in. But the boldest prediction, because I guess it'll be a second one, I'd say the Eagles are penalized 3 times or less all game. We've seen it all throughout playoffs. I'm not saying that it's a bias the refs have, whether it is or not. It's just penalties are penalties. You can't do anything about it after the fact. You can't challenge them or anything. So I'd say there's 3 or less penalties by New England. By New England. They're not going to be penalized more than 3 times.
And now the ultimate prediction. Who hoists the Lombardi Trophy? Isaiah, I'm going to let you make your prediction first. Who will take home the Lombardi Trophy and win and be crowned the NFL champions for the 2017-2018 NFL season?
I'm going Philadelphia. Out of all of my Super Bowl predictions ever, I've only been wrong twice, and both were against the Patriots. I just now noticed. I picked the Seahawks over Patriots and then the Falcons over Patriots. But they were both super close games. The only predictions I've ever been wrong in Super Bowls. I'm going Philly. Because if I'm Philly, I'm going to reach out to every former Giants coach or player ever and just try to get as much insight as I can. And I don't know. I feel like they're going to overcome the penalties, and I think they're going to win the turnover battle somehow. I don't know how, but I think they're going to win it.
Man, do I hope you're right. I don't agree with you, though. I think New England gets the win. I don't want them to tie the Steelers. I don't want them to become the best dynasty of all time. I think it's going to happen because, I mean, when you got a guy that's getting as good as he is with age, Tom Brady, when you've got a coach that still has a game plan as fresh as it is, when he's done it for 18 years now, Bill Belichick, when you've got playmakers like Rob Gronkowski and your secondary receiver being Danny Amendola, with everything happening in that team, I think the defense steps up, makes more plays than you may think. Stephon Gilmore maybe makes a pick. The same thing with Malcolm Butler. And don't be shocked if this defense outplays. And it comes down to, once again, as I said earlier in the game and earlier in the show, a Stephen Gostkowski kick. And I really just think that New England has an edge in this game. I really don't want it to happen. There's not many teams in the NFL that I don't like more than the Patriots for obvious reasons. But I think when you got to take into consideration the true skill, the talent that they have, the playmakers they have, the experience they have, I'm going with the Pats. And I think it's a close game, but I think the Pats win by 4.
I can elaborate for a short second on why I believe Philadelphia will win, and the reasoning behind that is Philadelphia, dating back to last year in playoffs, they start slow and they come back. But Philly's a team that we've seen, they know how to close games, and they might be the best closers that we've seen that they faced in playoffs. Because against the Rams in that game where Nick Foles stepped in, if they needed to score, I think, a touchdown, there might have been 10 total points to totally cash in that victory, and they did. So I don't know. I think that since they're closers, New England will start a comeback, but Philly's going to do something to close it out. I'd say it's going to be a win by at least a touchdown.
What do you think, folks? Am I going to be right, or is Isaiah going to be right? We'll find out. Tune in on NBC on Sunday to watch the 2017-2018 NFL season come to a close at 6:30. It'll be a great game. I'm sure it will be, and you definitely won't want to miss it. That's going to do it here for the official Super Bowl preview here on Hot Takes with Holmes from Radio Free Radford. If you like what you heard, be sure to tune in next week at 3, and be sure to like our Facebook page. We'll be talking more so general sports, more so we'll be reviewing the Super Bowl. We will be talking about the NBA, NCAA basketball. Spring training's right around the corner, too, so that's something we need to keep an eye out for. We're also on YouTube. If you know someone who potentially missed this broadcast or you just like to listen to something again, they will be updated to YouTube. You can find us at Hot Takes with Holmes on both Facebook and our YouTube channel. Be sure to drop a like and a subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. So for my co-host Isaiah Addair and everyone here at Radio Free Radford, I'm Blake Holmes, and we'll be back next week.